This is my favorite DJ, the podcast. This Thursday, Miami. I'm going to be at 11 after hours Thursday night, aka Friday morning, between the hours of 4 and 8 a.m. I'm playing the after hours set. Then Friday, I am in Fort Lauderdale, Sway. Saturday, I'm playing in Minneapolis with Joe Maz at the W. So if you guys are in that area, come check us out. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to be at Hyde in Las Vegas. I recently played on Saturday. It was last Saturday, the Saturday that just passed. Man, Saturday nights in Las Vegas are the best. Whenever my scheduling lands on a Saturday, it's like hitting home runs constantly. So good. Check out Everyday Co., which is a company that I collaborated with recently to put out 2 t-shirts, one for women, one for men. That's if you've looked at my Instagram profile, I have a t-shirt on that says The Truth in the Booth. That's the company that has them for sale. On Instagram, they are EVRYDYCO. So you can go on my Instagram if you follow me, and you can check out the shirt, and you can go to them and purchase one if you like them. There's also a t-shirt for women that says My Favorite DJ and has an arrow pointing. So if you have a girlfriend or a wife and you're so inclined to get her a t-shirt, if you have a, I don't know, anniversary coming up, a birthday of hers, something like that, they only come in women's sizes. So you can get her one of those. Alrighty, guys. I think that's it for pre-roll. Wanted to discuss something that has come up a lot in the past, but I don't think I've really done a show on it. And I'm just going to kind of wing it here because, I should have made notes for this, but I know this stuff pretty well, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head. There are different, when you're traveling, there are different deals that you can make with a nightclub when they book you. And the deal might actually be the reason why the club books you. I guess it all just really depends on the situation that you're dealing with. So let's go with just the most basic deal that a club will give you is show up on this night and we'll pay you your money. So there's different terminology for this in the industry. And some people might call it one thing, some other agents might call it something else, some clubs might call it one thing. I guess it just really depends. But this would be called an all-in rate. This, I think, is pretty common amongst the terminology. So this one's probably the easiest one. All-in meaning doesn't matter what city it is, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. You get this rate, and that is everything. So you have to take care, if you're traveling from out of town, you take care of your flight, you take care of your gas. If you're driving, you take care of your hotel, you take care of your food, you take care of everything. So that's an all-in rate, means you get this much money when you come here and you play our club. That would be the most basic rate. And that's pretty much what you, as a local DJ, or as local DJs, that's what we get. You get an all-in rate because you're driving to your local club or you're driving to your residency and they pay you X amount to play that night. That's an all-in rate. Simple. Now, there are tiers, obviously. I guess it depends how you want to classify them in regards to the next level up. There could be lots of different ways, different directions you can go. But I think I'm going to just stick with the most common and the ones that I've experienced, because considering that I've pretty much traveled the last 7 years all over the country, all over the world really, but mostly domestically, I know what I've gotten. So these are the deals that I know exist. So the next tier up would be your rate plus a hotel room. So now your negotiation whenever you're speaking to a club could be, hey, my rate is this amount, and I also need a hotel room for the night. So what does that mean? That means that you are in charge of your own flight, you're in charge of your gas if you're driving, you're in charge of your food, you're in charge of everything else except your hotel room. and you got to play at the club. So we're talking about if you're coming in from out of town. Now, again, there's different terminology for this. It could be like a landed rate. So the landed rate is this much. You take care of your flight. We got the hotel. We have your rate at the club. The next level up would be, I guess, again, it depends which direction you want to go in. But probably in that, using that specific model, which is rate plus hotel, there's pluses that you can add to that. So you could get your DJ rate at the club plus hotel plus ground transportation, meaning you are playing a casino that has limos available and you're coming from 2 hours away and they're willing to send a driver for you. So now you're getting driver plus hotel plus your club rate. Or you are in charge of flying into the city, but they'll pick you up at the airport, take you to the hotel, you play that night, and then they will pick you up from the hotel and take you back to the airport. So now you're talking about hotel, driver, and rate. Driver could be anything. They could send an Uber for you. They could have a limo pick you up. They can have the club general manager or owner or another DJ will pick you up. Like, they'll just designate someone to take you as a courtesy from the airport to your hotel, and then from the hotel back to the airport. Now, inside of that, there could be so many other little pluses and perks. I've played at places where they offer casinos in general are great to work for because they have so many amenities available, not just for you as a DJ, but for their clientele. So they have limos, they have car service, they have lots of food on the establishment, they have rooms, they might have massage spas, they have lots of things, and they can offer, or you can ask for these things, and sometimes they'll say, yeah, that's fine. So, for example, let's say that you're working out a deal with a casino club, and you say, hey, this is the rate. I'd like a room for the night, and also a $100 voucher a day to eat. Or I need a $200 spa credit for the day. Something like that. It's completely normal if you were to ask for something like that. Now, whether or not they give it to you, it's a different story, but those kind of things are available. So it's difficult to classify that as a tier, like, because there's so many different things that you might be able to get out of the deal that you or whoever the agent is making with the club. There's a lot of different things that you can get. Some things might be big, some things might be small. It really depends. Maybe you don't care for massages, so you don't even ask. Or you are picky about food, so you know you're not going to eat anything, which I don't know how that's likely. But again, those are different things that could be requested. Sometimes the club will offer them. It doesn't have to be a casino club. It can be just a freestanding nightclub, and they'll say, hey, you get this much for playing here. We'll get you a hotel room. We'll go to dinner. We'll hang out with owners or promoters or other DJs, and we'll feed you. That's common also. If they're booking you from out of town, they might want to hang out with you, talk, do the social thing. So that would, I guess, be classified as like hotel plus rate plus dinner. But you don't really, those little things, I don't know if they should be really focused on too much. The next level up would be hotel. Well, let's start with the rate. Rate plus hotel plus flight. Now there's different, and now with that, those three, rate, DJ rate, hotel, flight, you could add ground transportation from airport to hotel and hotel to airport. And then you can add the other little things like maybe a promoter dinner, maybe there's a dinner voucher, maybe they reimburse if you say, whatever you spend on food. Maybe at the hotel, they have a room service available for the customers of that hotel. So the club tells you, we got it, whatever you want to order from room service, the the hotel credit card, the club credit card is on the hotel. Just eat whatever you want. So those things might happen also. But I just want to stick to like the meat and potatoes of like the different kind of deals that you might be able to get. So you got rate, hotel, flight, and then let's say ground. This would be like one of the best deals available. I'll tell you guys that from personal experience, it's pretty rare that clubs pick up the entirety of the bill like that. It happens, definitely happens, but I think most deals structured, and now that we're kind of in a dip in the actual market, I don't think that there will be many places that will be taking care of all that stuff. There was a time where man, I remember I'd travel international and I'd get the rate, hotel, driver, a per diem for food, meaning they'd give me a credit for food. And if I wanted to stay an extra day, I'd get a hotel for an extra day. And this was like a super, super dope place to be at. So whenever I got that gig on like a Saturday, I'd be like, yo, ask them for a hotel on Sunday also. I'll come back Monday. And I would make the most of it. Man, that's where the game changes. And you go from I'm going to work to I'm going on vacation and I got to work for 3 hours on like Saturday night. And then I have the rest of the time to enjoy. I mean, I guess you enjoy working also, but enjoy a different piece. Because work is enjoyable, but also relaxing is enjoyable too. So, all right, we're at rate plus hotel plus flight plus, all the little things that might come along with that too. In regards to flight, here's how that could work. It could work that they say, we will reimburse the flight when you send us the receipt. So you book your flight, whatever airline you choose to fly, whatever seat you want to sit in, whatever time you want to take off, and you or your agent or whoever books this flight for you, and you send the receipt to the club once that's been processed, and then they would add that to the paycheck. So that would be the easiest way to do flight, because at the end of the day, you know what time is going to be best for you to fly. You know what your schedule is going to be like, and to deal with someone at the club, they don't usually have somebody designated that's like purchasing flights for people like that. So if you're able to work out this deal structure where there's a flight reimbursement, or maybe it's a partial reimbursement, maybe they pay for half the flight, it might not be the whole thing. It's easier for you to book it or whoever to book it for you and then get reimbursed at the club. Rarely does it happen that a club will go out of the way to book it for you. I used to have that happen, and I realized that clubs don't have my brain. So I want to fly out early in the morning, first flight out. I want to fly at a window seat. I prefer the exit row. There's so many things that I prefer that it's difficult to communicate, and it might make you look a little, it depends, because you're dealing with people that might have a lot of other things on their mind, a lot of other jobs that they're taking care of, and then they have to go down a list. It's like, okay, wait, he wants to leave at a direct flight at this time in the morning and a window seat. Now they have to go through like 7 different flights to find that thing, and then it's just, you kind of you might push the wrong button with somebody. It's like, yeah, this guy's a fucking diva. Like, why does he just fly? Like, just get on a plane and go. They don't get it. They might not get that you might be on a plane every week or every other day, and you have your preference in flying. So the easiest way to get that, if you get that deal, is just to say, hey, I'll buy the flight and you guys reimburse me. Now, there's obviously an ethical dilemma there. If you book yourself on first class, you might look like a total dick. If they don't tell you, there might be a cap that the club sets, and the club says we'll reimburse you up to $500, and you book something that's like $499 or $490 when there was a flight that was $200 available, you might look like a dick. So that kind of deal, you should be weary of. The pitfalls of greed in those instances. For sure, when I was under those deals, or when I have those deals, I try to be as fair as possible. and I won't book the most expensive flight. I won't book a first class seat if the club offers that deal. And it's not because I don't want to fly first class. It's just that I don't want to abuse that opening that the club's given me. So also, when you pick an airline that you fly with on a regular basis and you're able to accrue enough miles, I pretty much fly entirely on American, and I want to say that 80% of the time I get upgraded to first class. And that's because I have the highest tier with American Airlines, Executive Platinum. So 80%, and also I think it has to do with morning flights because I pick like the hard ones to get up for. 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. I always pick the first ones out, and I think people like their sleep, whereas I prefer to get an upgrade. So I would say it's very fair, if not underselling, to say that I get upgraded 80% of the time because of my status. It has nothing to do with what I buy on the actual airline or what gets bought for me. All right, so now we went over like the most basic deals, which is like, this is the all-in rate. Get yourself to this club, play music, and you get this check at the end of the night. Then the rate plus a hotel, the rate plus hotel and flight, and then all the little things in between that might be available depending on where you're playing and what kind of deal you're able to structure. There are a lot more, there are higher up deals that I've heard of, but we're talking about like acts, producers, EDM guys. And when in the EDM days, back in the day when you would play 128 BPM all night long, they would get ridiculous things. You know, they would ask for a specific car to pick them up, and they would want this kind of Starbucks when they landed. They would want fresh fruit on the rider, and they want. And some of it got to be a joke. Like I need T-shirts. I need brand new T-shirts, cotton Hanes T-shirts when I'm playing. Like these things will be baked into the contract. So all those things I would recommend that everyone steer away from because it'll just make you look like a dick. At this point in time, maybe a few years ago, it would have been funny. I remember, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I remember as a joke years ago when we put together the contract for me, I told my agent to write somewhere in the middle, buried in the contract. I told him to write that I had to get a sports drink like a Gatorade and chocolate covered strawberries. And this is something that we wrote in the contract. We wrote this in the middle of the contract somewhere where you actually had to read the whole thing to actually be able to read that. And I did a bunch of gigs. The contract always got sent out. And then I did a gig in Switzerland, and the manager comes up and brings up Gatorade and chocolate covered strawberries. Oh, first the Gatorade. And it was actually a waitress that came up. It wasn't a manager. It was a waitress. Was it a waitress? Or was it a manager or who there was a woman? I don't know. It's a woman came up to me and said, "Hey, is this okay?" And she had like 2 Gatorades in a bucket. And I'm like, "What?" Because I had completely forgotten that we had put that in the contract so many months ago or years ago. She's like, "Is this okay? The sports drink." And I was like, "What sports drink? What are you talking about?" And then they brought up the chocolate covered strawberries right as the sports drink was there presented to me. And she said, "It's in your contract. This is your sports drink and your strawberries." And I said, "Oh." And I tried to keep a straight face because I wanted to start laughing really, really loud. But these people were serious. It was like that level of commitment to honoring the contract. They were serious about this, and they were making sure that everything was okay. And in my head, I was laughing so hard, but I couldn't laugh because they took it real serious. They actually read the contract. So I said, "Oh yes, this is good. Thank you very much. This is perfect." And then I took many pictures of that stuff and sent it over to my agent. And I was like, "I can't believe they did it." They actually brought it. Look, chocolate covered strawberries and Gatorade. So that was fun, but it only happened once. And I think our contract changed after that. And I said, let's go ahead and leave it out. Yeah. So those are the deals the majority of the time that you'll be able to get when you're traveling out of town, or you should be able to get when you're traveling out of town. There's obviously, this is like plug and play. It's like mix and match. Maybe you're dealing with a club that doesn't want to book a hotel room all the time. So you say, hey, I'm coming in from out of town. Instead of getting me a hotel, just add on to the rate, $250, $200. Add it on to the rate, and I'll get my own hotel. That's another thing you could do. This is, like I said, it's plug and play, mix and match, depending on the situation. Maybe you deal with a club that you send them the rate, and they go, oh, that's too high. We can't pay that. And that's pretty much where the conversation would end, because if they say no to the rate at the club, then why would they say yes to a rate plus a hotel plus a flight reimbursement plus a driver? You know what you're dealing with at that point. It's no to your rate. The end. This is the rate. So what you potentially might be able to do is say, hey, how about you, instead of paying me my full rate, why don't we set up 3 dates in the first quarter of the year, or 3 dates throughout the year? You pay me 25% less and get me a hotel room. So in essence, it seems like you're getting a deal if you're the nightclub, because your rate went from being one thing to being 25% less. And now they might have a relationship with a hotel somewhere, and they might be able to get a real cheap room for you. And they got you 3 times out of the year for a reduced rate. So that might incentivize the nightclub to actually book you. Now, this is all, speculation, imagination, and a potential situation that might occur. But what I want to actually input into everyone's brain out there is that there's different possibilities. It doesn't always have to be, I need my rate plus my hotel plus my flight reimbursed, or I'm not going. It's like, okay, buddy, good luck with that one. The market right now, that's not going to happen. Unless you're actually selling tickets like a hard ticket seller, I don't see that happening for a lot of open format DJs right now anyway. So in my opinion, you should be able to be flexible with the kind of deals that get brokered, and know when to push and know when to concede a little bit. There should be a little bit of give and take. That's why it's called a deal. It's not called a give me what I want. So that was the first thing that I wanted to talk about, like different deal structures out there. And sometimes what happens for me, or for my schedule, there might be a situation where I'm playing a Friday in one sector of the country, and the Saturday does not get filled up for whatever reason. The clubs in the area maybe aren't booking out-of-town talent, or they're already booked up, whatever the case might be. The Saturday gets a little bit harder to fill, so then you could approach other clubs and say, in the area that you're going to be playing in, and give them an all-in rate that might be lower than your regular rate. So if you actually pick up a nightclub, let's say if you're from the East Coast and you pick something up in LA or in San Diego or in Sacramento, San Francisco, if you pick something up all the way across the country and they pay you whatever amount of money, the best thing for you to try to do would be to line up as many dates as you can around that. Try to Google, look up DJs, look up night spaces, maybe get in a date early and do a lounge somewhere, or a bar or something small. And this is regardless, I think, of the level that you're at. You should always want to work as much as you can. Try to make as much loot. Try to hit as many people on the dance floor as you can. All those things. So if you get booked on a Friday, look at Thursdays in the near vicinity, far enough away where the club won't get pissed that you're playing somewhere else first, right? So maybe if you're playing in San Francisco or you're playing in Sacramento, look at one of the other ones. So if you're in San Francisco, look at Sacramento, see if there's anything available on a Thursday, and say, hey, I'm playing San Francisco tomorrow on Friday, or that Friday. I'd like to play your spot on Thursday. It's far enough away. I think everything should be fine. And maybe it's a last minute thing. Maybe they say, no, you're too expensive. You can give them a reduced rate because you're already working that Friday. And then you could look up something on Saturday and do the same thing. Maybe you go to LA, it's a cheap flight. Maybe you go to San Diego. Everything in California is relatively inexpensive to get to once you're on the actual coast. So, and by inexpensive, I guess it really depends. It could be $100 or $200 flight amongst these different cities. So what I'm getting at is a lot of this is plug and play. A lot of this is mix and match. A lot of this is the best thing that you can do for yourself, for your brand, for your money, and to get you in front of as many people as you can and increase your exposure, increase your stock amongst clubs. Because like I've preached about before on this podcast, when you do that Friday, you take that flyer and then you show it to other places in the country saying, hey, look, not only do I work on the East Coast as a resident here, but I've also worked in San Francisco and maybe Sacramento and maybe LA, maybe San Diego. Here are all the flyers. This is why you should book me at your club in Dallas. Here's why you should book me at your club in Houston. Here's why you should book me at your club in Miami. You have ammo. You have a lot of different flyers and pieces of promo materials that clubs have invested into you because they believed that you were a good fit for their space. And then you parlay that, you push it into other places. That's, I guess, the most basic way of doing it, and that's the way that I did it. It took years. I would do all-in gigs in Oklahoma City for very reduced rate. I would make less money than I'd make locally at first. And this is years ago. This is a long time ago. But I remember that specifically because I thought to myself, this is silly. Why am I coming across the country to do this? But it was building up. It was building up the resume. And then from that Oklahoma gig, I got an Oklahoma casino, and that was a big bump in pay, and that was driver plus hotel plus food. So I guess you just got to trust the process depending on where you're at. But don't sell yourself short either, because if you're flying across the country for an amount of money that you could make locally, once you take out the flight, take out the agent fee, take out the eating, take out all the money that you lose along the way, that's not a sustainable model for very long. You're going to end up eating through your wallet. Flights, maybe you get lucky and the flight's not that expensive this time, but the next time they book you on a big weekend and those flights kill you. And maybe the hotel, if you're paying for it, will kill you too. And then you end up making less traveling across the country than you would have locally. And that's when it just doesn't make sense. I guess that's a good point I just thought of. It really depends what you're trying to get at. It depends on what you're trying to do. Do you want to go to a city because you want to sightsee, you want the experience, you want to check out a new place and DJ? Or do you want to go somewhere and make money and DJ? And maybe sightsee, maybe do the whole city. Because if you're just trying to have an experience and see a different city and maybe hang out with some DJ buddies, break even or make the same amount that you'd make locally, or maybe even lose money, but you want it for the experience, just to go out maybe once every, I don't know, however many weeks, you go to a different city and you hang out. You do the DJ thing, socialize, go out during the day, check out the night spots also, and just commiserate with your colleagues. I think that's cool. I'd rather make money. I'm just not that much of a social person. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Either, there's no wrong model in any of that. It's just up to what you want. Because I think there's a lot of places that will book DJs from out of town, but they'll just pay you their local rate. So you want to go across the country or go to a different city and get paid $500 or whatever they pay the local rate for the residents. I think that's pretty much available a lot of the time if you want to do it. But you're going to likely be taking an L to the bank account for that experience, which I guess at the end of the day, well, isn't that what traveling is anyway? You take an L to the bank account, but you actually get a W in experience, get a W for your brain, because you expose yourself to new sights, new things, new experiences, and that boosts your brain to different possibilities and gives you happy chemicals. So, all right, that was I think, to the extent, without getting like super deep into money and numbers and stuff like that, that I could explain all that stuff. I saw a tweet recently in regards to the money that I wanted to talk about. There was a tweet that said, I forget, it doesn't matter who it was by, and I'm not like disparaging or throwing shade at it at all, but I just wanted to kind of talk about it and what I think, because I don't think that it made a lot of sense. The tweet said something like, club can make $20,000 in a night and the DJ only gets $500. That's not fair. The DJ should get a percentage of revenue. And I think in general, the last couple of weeks, there might have been more than one tweet sent out about what DJs make and how they should make more. And I wanted to kind of explore that. First of all, it's obvious that everyone in every field that they work in wants to make more money. So the owner of a business wants to make as much money as possible. And the employee that might work for that owner wants to make as much money as possible. So everyone wants to make as much money as they can. But there's only a few positions that might allow you to dictate what you make. And one of those positions is when you're in charge of writing the checks. So if you are a business owner, or you're an owner of a restaurant or a nightclub or a barber shop, you get to structure what the pay is like. Now, obviously, you want to be competitive in the marketplace. There might be 10 barbershops in a 10-mile radius of you. So if you want the best barbers, maybe you have to conform and pay above what you think a barber's worth. If you want to be a barbershop owner, maybe you're a barber yourself, maybe you're not, maybe it's an investment. But if you're offering $5 an hour to barbers, obviously this is just an example because barbers make way more money. But if you're offering $5 an hour to barbers and everywhere else they're offering $25 an hour for a barber, then you will get no barbers to work in your barber shop. If you are a nightclub owner and the going rate in the city is $500 and you offer $100 for the night, you will not get a DJ. Now, you might get a DJ that is brand new, wants to try the thing out, just got a computer 2 weeks ago, just like you might get a barber that has no clue what they're doing, cannot cut hair well, and at the end of the day will end up being a liability to your business. Same thing goes for the DJ. In this scenario that takes the $100 when the market rate's $500. They might be a really bad DJ, they might be in a really tough spot and they need the money, but most likely it's a bad DJ. And if it's a bad DJ, it's just going to be detrimental to the business as a whole. So the person that gets to decide who gets paid is the person who's writing the checks, and that decision is made through market fundamentals, market, what would be a good word here? It's made through the market. That's what it is. So to say that a DJ should make a percentage of revenue for the night when the nightclub is open, that sounds great. So you should open a club. You should build your way up to being a nightclub owner. And then once you're a nightclub owner, say any DJ that DJs for me makes 10% of the revenue of the club that night. That sounds like a great idea. I'd love to work at that club as long as they're making a lot of money. Because on an off night when they don't make money, let's say they only make, let's say they make $3,000. They open up on a day where there's a traffic accident on the highway. It's hard for people to get to the club, and it's raining, and the club owner decides to open the club up, and you only make $3,000. And I had to drive through the rain and get in an hour and a half of traffic to make it to the club to make $300 because that's 10% of $3,000. Now, here's why that doesn't make. That's one reason why it doesn't make sense is because clubs will do well and they won't do so well. But here's another reason why. to ask for a percentage of revenue of any business makes you an owner of that business. It makes you are not liable for any problems that arise. Zero problems whatsoever. If the electricity goes out because the bill didn't get paid, you don't have to worry about that because you just show up and play and get 10%, 5%, whatever percentage of revenue. You have zero risk. This is why this whole concept doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to explain it. You have zero risk in that business, and you're making a percentage of revenue, which means if somebody slips on the dance floor and sues the business and they actually get a ruling in their favor, a $1 million ruling to the person that slipped because the person in charge forgot to get insurance or whatever the case might be, something happens, you're not going to pay 10% of that to that person. The business would have to pay for it. So to say that anybody deserves a piece of revenue, the DJ, the host, the promoter, the bartender, to say that anyone deserves a piece of revenue, a percentage of revenue from a nightclub or any other business, I don't think makes any sense. If you want a piece of revenue, then build the business up yourself. If you want to give away equity at that point, when you've built a business, here's my ice cream shop. If you want to serve ice cream for me, you get 10% of revenue for the day or for the week or for the month or whatever it is. Hey, as an owner, you get to decide what you do with your revenue. Go for it. But to say we should make a percentage of revenue, listen, doesn't make any sense, in my opinion, right? And again, I'm not disparaging the tweet because I'd love to work for clubs like that, but just from the sake of, or rather from the sense of looking at it like any other business, it's just not going to happen. It doesn't make any sense for people to work hard, invest their money, be liable for certain things that might come up, be in charge of payroll, be in charge of all of the things that happen when you own a business, and then just give a percentage away to someone because they do a service for you. No way. So I think that there was another tweet on the amount of money that DJs should be getting paid. It should be at least this much money. Well, based on what? Based on what? Because you don't have to take, this is just like, I'm just speaking with my business brain, not my DJ brain. My DJ brain wants us to make as much money as possible every night, regardless of where we are, or what we're doing, how long we're playing for. I want the DJs to make as much money, right? So if I own a club, I'm still not giving a DJ a percentage of the fucking money I make. That's ridiculous. I will give you a great rate. I will make sure everything's taken care of. Whatever the market rate is, I'm willing to, go over it and pay a very fair amount, but it won't be based on how much I make as a nightclub owner. And I think if you put yourself in that position, you probably would do the same thing. You would want to be very fair. You would want to make sure that everyone makes what they're supposed to make, run a good business, but not overpay people for the sake of overpaying them, right? And so I don't want my words to be taken out of context, because when I say the word overpay people, somebody might say, well, we deserve to make more, so it's not overpaying us because we're worth it. I agree, you're worth it. But look, Apple they have like $1 trillion in the bank. They make God knows how many billions of dollars a year, right? They're not going to give an employee at the Apple store that sells iPhones a percentage of the fucking company. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to give you, oh, you get 5%, you get 3% of our sales today. It's just, in what world would that exist, right? And they're probably the most important, they're one of the most important people in the actual Apple chain, because they're the ones that deal with directly with a customer. They're the money people. They take the money from people. They take your credit card, they take your cash, and they swipe it. They're collecting. They're on the front lines of making sure Apple makes money. They have all of this research and development. They have all these offices. They have all these things going on. They have people in factories making the phones. They have marketers that sit there and just make these ads. They have graphic designers. They have software designers and developers, engineers, all these people, right? And then at the end of the line, it's a dude or a girl in a blue shirt with an Apple logo selling you the product. They're the money people. And they get paid pretty much the least out of the entire chain I just mentioned, because they're employees. And they can't say, I'm the person that collects the money, so I deserve a percentage of the company. So if you want to pay a DJ a percentage of the club, then you should own a club and then say every DJ that works here gets a percentage of the club. In regards to getting paid based off of the amount of money that a club makes that night, look, I remember when I was in my early years, I was getting, I don't remember, it was like a low local rate. And I said to the guy that brought me in, I was like, man, these waitresses make like $4,000 a night. I need a raise. And he said, he looked at me. And by the way, I had a great relationship with this guy, but he looked at me stone cold in the eyes and he says, do you want to be a DJ or do you want to be a waitress? And that was it. It's like every position is going to pay something different. And if you don't like it, go do something else, right? That's just what it is. You can complain about the conditions in the marketplace or you can accept them and try to make them work in your favor. I've worked for clubs that probably made very little money because weather was bad or whatever the case might be, and not a lot of people show up. So they might not, after paying me and paying their employees and paying the light bill, paying for the product, in this case it would be alcohol, paying for everything that goes into the bouncers, paying the managers, the entirety of the staff getting paid and paying me and opening up, they probably lost money. And I still got my paycheck. And I've worked at clubs that have made $200,000 on an off night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they still paid me my rate. So it goes, I think, in the favor of the DJ to set a rate and get paid that no matter what. Because there might be nights where things just don't go well, and this really is market dependent and situational, but there might be times where maybe the club loses money. So in that case, what are you going to pull money out of your pocket to pay the club a percentage? Oh, hey, we're $6,000 under, so we're negative 6,000, which means that you got to pay us $600 because you make 10% when we do good, so you got to pay us 10% when we do bad. Shit, I don't want that deal. And how many nightclubs do you know that have been open for more than 5 years? Go ahead and count them. Because there's not that many. The nightlife business is hard. And sometimes it's not profitable. So that I wanted to touch on that tweet because in theory, it seems like such a great idea to get paid a percentage of what the club makes. But in reality, it's a lot more complicated than that. And there's a lot of different aspects to that have to be discussed prior to actually getting there. So the next two things I have written down, and by the way, I'm writing things down now because I told myself, and then I told you that I would do a podcast every Tuesday and a mix every Saturday morning. So I'm writing things down during the week because I would have thoughts, and here's I'm actually going to admit that I was being, I don't want to use that word. I'm actually going to admit that I was not being as efficient as I could be. I would have thoughts throughout the week and like, oh, that might be a good thing to talk about on the podcast. And I wouldn't write them down, and then they'd get lost. And now I decided to write everything down that I think of on the spot. And look at that. It's been 43 minutes, and I have not lost my train of thought. I've pretty much gone straight through. I'm giving concise information that I think is helpful for everyone that might be listening. If this is something that you find to be informative, if you take something from this that's educational or you benefit from this in any way, this is a great time for you to screenshot the podcast and share it on your Instagram stories. Tag me and I'll re-story it. I'll repost it on my account. So if you think that this is providing you with value, share it for other DJs that might think the same. And if you're on Twitter, just tweet. If you don't have like a Instagram, which would be weird, but if you don't have Instagram, put it up on Twitter and I'll retweet it. Take a screenshot and send it out there and say, hey, this is helpful. It's a good way to grow a podcast, right? All right, so the next thing that I have written down here, mixing in key. I saw some tweets about this recently too. Mixing in key is fantastic. Mixing in keys, something that can be very handy. And I'm glad that it's around. Prior to being able to know what key the songs were in, I would just play music without a freaking clue. And if it sounded like shit, it sounded like shit. But most of the times it didn't. But if it did, it's hard to bail out on one of those vinyl mixes. I'll tell you that much, because if you're playing, you've committed to a mix with vinyl, it's hard to bail. Unless something goes really wrong, you're pretty much in it. Mixing a key is a great tool when using acapellas over instrumentals. And if you're doing instruments that are going to land on top of each other, definitely want to be in key, because it helps just the overall feeling. Like, you ever hear something that's out of tune or hear something that's off key and you're like, ugh, that sounds like shit. Cool. You don't want to do that to a room full of people, because they're all going to think that, unless they're tone deaf, and there's not that many people in the population that I think are tone deaf. That's a good thing to look up. I wonder how many people in the population are tone deaf. I would ask Siri, but she's really retarded. She never gets anything right. So let me ask how many people in the population are tone deaf? Let's find out together. It's called, there are few truly tone deaf people. It is estimated that only between 2 and 5% of the population is medically tone deaf, and there are varying degrees of tone deafness. Cool. So 2 to 5% in that room, 2% to 5% of the people in the room where you've just committed some shitty mix with 2 off-key things that went off and sound like shit will be like, I don't know, that sounded good to me. So that's not a high enough percentage to sound like shit. So let's ask this. How many people in the population have perfect pitch? And let's look this up. Oh, they're going to make me do math. From 1 to 5 people per 10,000 have absolute pitch, according to estimates. Perfect pitch occurs in musicians at higher rates, from less than 1% up to 11%, according to some studies, but that's musicians. It runs in families, suggesting a genetic link. Oh, that's interesting. And occurs most often in people who had musical training before age 6. Holy shit! Are you serious? That is so incredible. So if you give a child under 6 years old musical training, they have more susceptibility to getting perfect pitch. That's incredible. So maybe that could be a genetic trait that gets turned on by giving them musical training. Holy shit, my mind's blown. Can perfect pitch be learned? A study suggests adults can be trained to develop perfect pitch, but being able to reliably identify or reproduce a pitch without error is rare. If you're not born with perfect pitch, prior studies suggest your only hope of getting it is to receive musical training at a critical period in your childhood. Oh, so you can be born with it. Oh my God, I have to read up on all this shit. This is incredible. If you're born with perfect pitch, you're good to go. You got lucky. If you're going to be a musician, you won the lottery. But if you were not born with perfect pitch, you can receive musical training at a critical period in your childhood and hope that you develop it. Holy shit. But so let's see. This is musicians at higher rates. So 1 to 5 people per 10,000. So we have 350 million people in this country? 350 million divided by 10,000.
The answer is 35,000.
Okay, so there's 35,000 sets of 10,000 in the population, which means that it can be one person. It could be 35,000 people if it's one, or it could be 5 times that, if I'm doing this math correctly. But that's a very small percentage of the population. We're talking about 1% to 5%? No, even less than that. Wow, that's even smaller than the other one. Let's ask Siri again. 35,000 is what percentage of 350 million?
It's 0.01%.
Yeah, cool. So good luck. Perfect pitch. Not happening. I hope you got musical training when you were young. So mixing in key is great, and most of the room is going to hear you wrecking some music in a really bad way if you don't mind your keys. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is programming, mixing, scratching, and everything, and all the pluses that go after. Tone play, word play, etc., etc. I think that there's a hierarchy in regards to when we DJ, what the most important things are. And the first one's tough because it's tough to pick between programming, meaning the selection of tracks, and actual mixing, because those two things are so important. They're so very important. If the dance floor is moving to a certain groove, if there's a certain pitch, if there's a certain speed, a BPM that's been constant throughout the room, people are dancing at a certain pace, and then if you change that drastically, it's going to change the whole mood, the energy of the room, et cetera, et cetera. So the two top ones, and I put programming over mixing, meaning that the song selection is more important than mixing, because you can play a song from beginning to end. If let's say you're playing somewhere, a birthday or a smaller dance floor, you can play a song from beginning to end without knowing how to mix. And as long as you pick really good songs, people will enjoy themselves. This is how I came to that conclusion. So I think the selection of music is the most important thing when you're playing music. Secondly, would be putting them together. So mixing them in a proper way would be number 2. And then on top of that, you add scratching. And then on top of that, you could add tone play and word play and clever transitions and double time, single time things and all the backspins and all the technical stuff that goes on with DJing. You can put on, as pluses to the first 3 things, which I think are the fundamentals, which is selection, mixing, and scratching. And I have evidence to back this up. Now, I've never been on a dance floor where the DJ played a song from beginning to end and made it work, but I've DJ'd with DJs that have great song selection and only mix music, and they are freaking incredible DJs because, and this is another corroborative event that I would say puts song selection and programming at the top and then mixing second, even though you kind of need both. I don't know. It's tough to decide, but for sure you need to know how to mix if you're a DJ. So let's just put that blanket statement out there. But the most important thing is song selection, knowing when to play what, for how long to play it for, the speed that you play it at, the record before it, the record after it, the one thing that you're like, oh, this record's going to nail it. It's going to be great. You have an exit strategy. You have a ramp that puts you up, and then all of a sudden you drop that perfect record. Programming and song selection is the most important thing. And I seriously doubt that there will ever be a robot that can mimic song selection. A robot will be able to scratch. A robot, and by robot I mean artificial technology or a program that DJs for you. Some of these are already in existence. There was a thing, I think by r.o.a.d that got put out. It was called like r.o.a.d Pyro or something like that would mix the songs one into another. Because at the end of the day, you have a grid and you have a BPM, and all you have to do is match the BPM and match the grid. And now you, as a program, would know where the one is, where the snare is, and just put things together. It's not that hard when you look at it that way. Probably with disco, funk music, and unquantized things, it might be more difficult, but a robot, an artificial intelligence, a program would be able to mix already. And it's already in existence. And it's eventually scratch also. I feel like all you're doing is manipulating sound in a certain pattern, so that can be easily taught to a program as well. But here's why I don't think a program, artificial intelligence, a robot would ever get what we're talking about. It would, but it'll take many, 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 many years. Here's why. I think, anyway, my opinion. When you are looking at a dance floor, you are chunking data. You're looking at movement, you're looking at dancing, you're looking at smiles, you're looking at hands up, you're looking at energy, you're literally looking at, not literally, you're looking at energy out in front of you. So you know when that crowd is primed and it can get to the next level. Now, how would you put that into a program or a robot or a piece of artificial intelligence? It would have to be able to visually inspect a nightclub or a dance floor and be programmed into this thing, whatever it might be, that when the movement reaches a certain place that you would play a hot record. Good fucking luck with that. Because what if there's a fight on the dance floor or there's a dance off and all of a sudden the entire crowd stops and there's two people dancing in the middle of a circle? At that point, what happens? Does this artificial intelligence think that it would be time to close? You know what I'm saying? It's really difficult to program these things because you're looking at a fluid environment that's constantly changing. If you had something that could potentially read heat signatures, maybe they could see how hot bodies get. Maybe there's a correlation with temperature and excitement in the body. Maybe you got something there too. So an artificial intelligence or a program that's looking out into the dance floor and can actually see heat signatures of the dancers and see when it gets to a certain percentage. Maybe a lot of people are dancing at once and their body temperature rises by a small fraction of a percentage. So the dance floor's warmed up and everyone's having a great time. Maybe alcohol influences this too. So are you looking at a bunch of people dancing or a bunch of drunks? Who knows? But I'm sure that there's enough data out there that can be collected that eventually would get an artificial intelligence, a robot, a program to be able to read a dance floor, to program music, because as we've explored, they could already mix it. But I think that is very, very far off because that technology isn't even around on a mainstream scale. Like, what is this called? Bio something. When you have a machine that reads biometrics. Biometrics we just got a thumbprint on the iPhone. Like that's the extent of consumer biometric. That's what we have so far. Some stupid thing not some stupid thing, the most advanced thing in the world, actually. One of the most advanced computers that fits in your pocket has a biometric sensor that reads your thumbprint. So there's that. So that's what we have so far for commercial use. And then you have an Apple Watch or other watches that you can put on your wrist that might measure your pulse. But as far as biometrics, we're not anywhere near being able to read 300 people on a dance floor based on a million different things, whether it be movement, temperature, level of maybe CO2 in the atmosphere around the dance space. Maybe people exhale more when they're dancing and something could potentially read up. That is so far in the future. Anyone that might be worried about a robot or an artificial intelligence taking DJ's place, I don't think that it's going to happen. I mean, not in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I seriously doubt it. There's a lot of other places where that technology needs to be applied to first. We're talking about dancing and having fun in a nightclub. There are a lot of different applications for biometrics that would first have to be filled, proven, tested, tried, verified before it ever made it to our realm. So, damn, that was a tangent on on robots taking over the DJ world. When I just wanted to say that the most important thing that you need to do is learn how to program music. I've DJ'd with guys that don't scratch, and all they do is pick the perfect selection for the dance floor and mix it together. And it works, and they're killers, and they never scratch. They never tone play. They never word play. But in the moment, it works perfectly, and every night is different. If I play a different club with that person, with a DJ that just makes great selections but only mixes tracks, he's going to pick a different set for that dance floor because that's what they're really good at. And anyone out there that's thinking to themselves, I can't scratch that well, I can't do all these cool things that I see other DJs do, that stuff will come. It's not the most important thing. You can extend your creativity through different avenues. You don't have to be the best scratcher in the world. You don't have to scratch all the time. You don't have to scratch at all. There are DJs that can get by with get by is the wrong word. There are DJs that can kill a dance floor with a great selection and mixing through records. All the other stuff are pluses. They're bonuses, but You want to be really good at being able to pick music and making sure that you know what song fits where and how you're going to put it into the rotation. And then at the same time, be working on all the other things that will make you stand out amongst your peers. I think selection and being the ability to mix will make you stand out amongst crowds and amongst owners and amongst nightclubs, and all of the pluses will make you stand out with your colleagues. And even though those things are very important and should be learned, they're not an immediate requirement. If you find yourself thinking, oh, I can't scratch, so I'm not going to try to play a club. Well, how good is your mixing and how good is your selection? Because if you have those two things down, you can start spreading your wings a little bit and trial by fire. Put yourself out there. Put yourself in a position where you could make some money, play for some people, play for bodies is very important to know exactly where you stand. If everyone's dancing and having a good time, you're a good DJ. You're doing a good job. If people are not dancing and they are not having a good time, then there's something that might be missing. It might not always be your fault, but there might be something missing. So I think that's it. Those are the topics that I had for this week. I'm going to start writing down everything. Thank you guys for listening. I think that's it. I already asked you guys to share the podcast. If you haven't, now's a great time to share it. Check out the links in the description of this podcast. There's a lot of really good stuff for you guys to check out. And you can send me questions to myfavoritepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's myfavoritepodcast@gmail.com. I get your questions. I can read them on the show. If they're anonymous, you say, hey, I don't want anyone to know. I will not mention your name, and I'll read the question. It would be helpful for the whole community, maybe, if we send in a question that other people might have also, but haven't had the time to write the email or feel embarrassed and don't want to ask it themselves. If you have a question, there's probably a lot of people in your place all over the world that have the same question, and I'd love to get it out there to them. I'd like to at least get my opinion out there to them. And if you want to have a mix featured on this podcast, you can send it to the same email. I have another feature mix coming out this Saturday, and there's another one planned for the Saturday after that. And the last mix that I put out was, I think, by B Mills from New York, and he played some really cool eclectic tunes, like a lot of things that aren't supposed to work together, but it did work. And at first I thought that it was a mix that he could have, because I heard him cutting throughout the mix, so I hear that he has the talent range and the technical ability to like really push boundaries, or to like make things, spice things up a bit at least. And at first I thought that the mix was kind of not, I don't want to say the word boring, because it's not boring. The mix was very safe and it was mixing straight through. But then I wanted to talk about how song selection